Look, up in the sky.
It's a poisoned bird.
It's a plane out of fuel.
It's Superman 64.
Welcome to How Did This Get Played, the show where we discuss the worst and weirdest video games of all time. I'm Nick Wiger alongside Heather Anne Campbell.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
This
Was that directed at me?
I mean, I was asking the audience.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll reply on their behalf. We're doing all right.
Yeah, this podcast is very quickly ruining my favorite hobby.
This is episode 2, and it sucks. I'm so upset. Also with us, our producer, Matt Apodaca. Matt, how you holding up?
I'm doing fine.
We're punishing ourselves. This week, our game is Superman, The New Superman Adventures, a.k.a. Superman 64, released in 1999 for the Nintendo 64, as you might assume, an 3D action adventure widely regarded as among the worst video games of all time. And to help us break this down, to help us dissect this turd, from Adam Ruins Everything and the brand new podcast, Factually, which is available now on Earwolf, Adam Conover. Hi, Adam.
Hello. Game is bad. It's really bad.
It's bad.
Hello, up in the sky. It's me to tell you the game is bad. I tried to play it last night because I was like, I want to bone up.
Yeah.
You know, I just did a Star Trek podcast where we rewatch Star Trek episodes.
That sounds fun.
Treks in the City with Alice Wetterland and Veronica Osorio. And I watched a whole episode of Star Trek. Wasn't a very good episode, but I spent a nice 45 minutes watching and just got out of talking about it. I also tried to install this game on an emulator and play it, and I could not play it for more than 10 minutes. It's unplayable. It's almost impossible to even do this episode.
My hope is that this is the bottom of the barrel.
I don't think we're close. I think that the fact that the game has like depth and that you can like kind of drive Superman means that the worst is yet to come for us.
Yeah.
There was a game where you played as like a big sphere. Like in the late 90s, that game was worse, I think.
What was that game?
I don't fucking remember.
A Sphere in the late 90s. What system?
Yeah, you remembering a dream you had in middle school?
Yeah.
I'm having a stroke right now.
Adam, you are a gamer, as is my understanding.
I play a lot of games. I play basically everything. I stream on Twitch and stuff like that. Yeah.
What are your favorite types of games? I know you've been playing some Sekiro, a famously hard game. This game also hard in a very different way.
I mean, I play absolutely everything. I got into the Souls-like type games in the past couple of years. Sekiro, I've been having a lot of fun with. I had a very wonderful, exciting, cathartic moment in Sekiro last night where I transcended my own abilities and defeated a boss that I never...
Which boss?
The first 7 Ashina Spears boss. There's a spear guy on top of a hill.
Yep.
And I was streaming and I was getting frustrated and I was like, guys, I think this is my last... I'm sorry. They were like, we want to stay up till Adam beats the boss, the people in chat. And I was like, no, guys, it's only one more try for me. I've been playing for 2 hours. I got to go to bed. And then I just literally, okay, let me try one more time. And I just had the perfect battle where like I parried or blocked every single attack and then, did the exact right counter move and hit him. And I defeated him without taking a single hit after having him hand my ass to me 10 times in a row. And I literally today watched the clip of me doing it. Twitch lets you save clips. I watched the clip of me doing it like a dozen times because it felt so cool. I was like, this should be on like the Instagram account House of Highlights because I look so cool in it. I feel like, I didn't know. That was the feeling that this game gave me of I suddenly transcended my own abilities and did something I never thought possible.
That's the thing about Sekiro is like when you figure out a thing in that game, you're like, I did this. I did it. Yeah. I learned something and got better. In Superman 64.
I love bringing it back to Superman.
When you do something, it's you just feel sick. Like you feel like
I'm just like when I do something in this game, I'm unclear on what happened. Did I wait? So that was I won? Okay, all right.
But
I failed.
That comparison though is like you're comparing like in Citizen Kane, they use light and imagery to tell a story. In this colonoscopy video, by contrast,
right?
Like it's like not even the same medium almost.
Yeah, I mean, we might as well compare Citizen Kane to Superman 64 because it's as adjacent to a good game as it is to a good movie. It is so far removed from something that's playable. So before this, Adam, before you played this steaming pile, what is the shittiest or most disappointing game you've ever played? Does anything come to mind?
Oh man, let me think about that. The most disappointing game I ever played. Oh, this is when I was thinking about recently.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I loved the Tick animated series on Fox.
Right.
Fox Kids. That was like such a funny show, and it really hit my sensibility, and good jokes and things, and interesting characters in the world. The animation was really good, and there was a Super Nintendo game, and I rented the Super Nintendo game, and the Super Nintendo game is just hours of the most repetitive beat 'em up you've ever played. It's just punch, punch, punch. The third punch is an uppercut, and you do that over and over again until your hand hurts against the exact same types of enemies. Then a boss comes, and he's just like a bullet sponge, like a sponge of you just have to do that over and over again. And it was the first time I remember, because when I was a kid, I'd play bad games all the time and just be like, oh, I suck, or I'm just who knows. But that was one of the first times I remember thinking like, this is a bad game. I'm not having fun. Nothing changes in the game. The only good thing was there's a little animation. One of the uppercuts was, instead of doing an uppercut, he would flick them with his finger. He'd go like bink, like that, and they would fly away, and like nice little bit of animation. Fun. Apart from that, just so dull. Like this game has like, I watched one of those like World of Long Plays videos, and that account was like, this is one of the worst games I've ever played. Like, it's so dull. It's like it just hurt. It's just a hand herter. There's nothing to it.
I feel like when you're a kid and your parents aren't rich, they would find a game like in either the bargain bin at Blockbuster or at KB Toys or whatever, and they'd bring it home like it was a real gift. And they'd be like, hey, we got you the Tick. For me, it was Low G Man, was like a $5 game that they picked up for me.
Wait, I'm sort of remembering
I remember the title.
You're in like a rocket or something?
No, you're a guy who jumps really high.
Oh, boy.
But I believe that if you take damage, you can't jump as high. Low G Man.
If you think about it, anybody who goes to the moon is a low G man or woman. It's
true.
It's not about you. It's about the gravitational environment.
Yeah, there's a screenshot of it. It's pink buildings, or it's awful. It was fucking awful. But it is. I would rather, if I was in hell and I had to choose between Low G Man and Superman 64. I'd choose Low G Man.
I have not heard of Low G Man prior to this, and that screenshot is my only context for it, but I agree with you. Having played Superman 64.
I mean, this game looks done, which like Superman 64 is fundamentally not done as a game.
It's a huge problem with it, and that's a fair thing to bring up. It was so a little bit more about the game was based on Superman the animated series, which is generally well regarded. I feel like it's where it borrows the game borrows its aesthetic, and the limited amount of voice acting it has is from the series. In parts, though, I think they switch up the voice actors for some of it. And I guess DC apparently, this is coming from the developer, so it's a slightly biased source, but the DC apparently really hamstrung development with all their demands. In part, the setting, it's in a virtual world because DC was worried about Superman hurting real people.
Right. I feel like maybe they saw like Grand Theft Auto, like the top-down original PlayStation Grand Theft Auto, and they were like, we can't have that.
No.
Like, what if Superman did that? Like that's what games are now. We gotta make sure that Superman isn't doing these terrible things.
I mean, though, that would have been a fascinating game. It was just Grand Theft Auto 1. You're just stealing cars and mowing down pedestrians as Superman. Jesus Christ.
That sounds...
Playing this game... Oh, what?
No, that sounds great. Now that's a power fantasy. You just murder everybody in town with your superpowers. There are games like that, But it's also, I mean, that's such a dumb move in general. Like I played the newest Batman Arkham game, Arkham Knight, and you're like out in the city, but it's like at the beginning of the game, it's like, everybody has evacuated Gotham City, and like there's no people except for villains now. The only people in the whole city are bad guys. And when you run them over with your car, they get electrocuted, so they're not being killed by Batman. They're like, just being paralyzed or whatever. Right. And like all of this is a fig leaf for the fact that, well, we can't show all those people. We can't have a driving game without you accidentally running over people on the sidewalk. So there can't be any pedestrians, and it only has to be evil guys. And even they are not actually being killed. And it's just like, take the fucking fig leaf off. Like, you're driving over people. These sort of weird plot developments to avoid those problems aren't food fooling anybody.
And speaking of the DC universe, the story of Superman 64 is as follows. This is I'm going to read this verbatim from the manual, the N64 print manual, which is the only context you get for what is happening in the game at all.
Can you do me a favor and say the words in bold a little bit more aggressively,
Okay.
so that we get the tone of it?
Right, sure, I'll do my best.
Okay.
Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen have disappeared. They've been kidnapped by the malevolent powers of Lex Luthor and Brainiac, who have brought them into a virtual reality version of Metropolis. Explore the incredible powers of Superman firsthand as you battle to rescue Lois Lane from the clutches of Metallo, then attempt to free Jimmy Olsen from the steel grip of Darkseid. Race into outer space to face Brainiac's evil alien technology, and above all else, destroy Luthor's deadly dream of a virtual reality Metropolis. You control the powers. You are Superman! That last one was bold, all caps.
What is a virtual how are they trapped? How are they trapped in it? Are they wearing goggles and they're like Matrix style, or are they like have they been teleported into it? How do you rescue someone from a virtual reality Metropolis?
Well, from the context the game's opening cutscene gives us, it appears that they enter voluntarily. Like, because they're all three of the character, like Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, and then the character who's not mentioned in here, but you learn from the tutorial, Professor Hamilton, are just standing in front of a portal, like a Stargate, and Lex Luthor is outside, and then you just walk into it.
Yeah, Lex Luthor does not shove them in. They walk backwards, facing Superman into a virtual world. Also, the fact that it's a virtual world. All right, hold on. If we are playing the game that Superman is playing,
yes.
So is that justification for why the control is so bad?
Right.
Oh, is Superman just sitting there with an N64 controller and he's controlling a little virtual Superman, and that's what you're doing? Because if so, that's very hip game design wise to have a sort of in-world UI that you're controlling. You know, I think that's good.
That's why the controls are so sensitive, because Superman is so strong that he's not used to using an analog stick.
Yeah.
So you just fly wildly in one direction with the slightest push.
It also explains the lag, because you are controlling Superman to control Superman in the game. So you press up, which means to tell Superman press up, which is then how Superman in the game moves.
Superman probably has the gaming skills of like a 40-year-old newspaper reporter who's never touched a game in 1997 or whenever this was, 1999.
Superman's a noob.
Yeah, Superman's a fucking noob.
So then Luthor's made challenges in the virtual world for Superman, like he's got to fly through rings.
Yeah, so let's talk about the rings a little bit.
Why is that a plan?
Why is that something that Warner Brothers was like, that's it, go with that?
We need the rings.
Yeah.
Those rings have got to be in there. Apparently, the rings were involved from the beginning. It's so... Here's the thing. The coolest thing about being Superman is flying. Like, I get to fly, and this game makes that part so unfun because you are restricted by having to fly through a sequence of rings under a very strict time limit. And the way the rings work, it's like... I think you have to, if you miss 3 rings, you have to restart the level. So you're just sort of like, you're just navigating through this, through what Lex calls a maze. If you want to find your friends, solve my maze, which he seems to say at the start of every level.
Yeah.
It's not a maze.
It's not a maze.
It's
a maze
path.
is a puzzle. It's a path.
Yeah.
It's like slaloming it's like a ski.
Right.
It's like skiing carefully.
Did Pilot Wing 64 have rings? Is that where they got this idea from?
Yeah, well, I mean, Star Fox had wings as well. Or rings. Well, it had wings, obviously, but it had rings as well. Like in the training missions, you could fly through them.
But it wasn't you failed to fly through the rings, you start over. It's like if you do a cool loop and you go through the arch just right and you did some great flying, then you get a bonus gun or something like that. That's fun.
If you do a barrel roll, you're sitting pretty. It's so clunky and it's so unfun to fly around as Superman. It's just like, it's like if you're playing the Spider-Man game and you're like, fuck, more web slinging. It's like the thing that you want to do is the least fun part.
Yes.
Also, when you let the game show you how to play, like when you let the game show you a demo.
Oh, I didn't do this.
The demo fails. Like he flies through like 8 rings, misses one, flies up in the sky, gives up, flies into a bridge, and gets stuck. And that's the demo of the game.
It's the AI quitting on its own game.
And it's the worst when you miss one. If you want to go back, it's the worst controls where you have to. It's one of the control schemes where you press A for thrust.
Yeah.
And then your right and left are your turn, and then up and down changes your vertical turn. So you're sort of pointing yourself in the right direction, which is the most difficult way to control a flight. And like that. This is not a good control scheme, and so if you miss one, you can like get into a little groove where you're going through them. Oh, okay, and down and up and right and left. It's not fun, but you can get into that. But then when you miss one, you're like, okay, stop, and you feel like a truck. You're like beep, beep, beep. I have to back up, turn around, and then you have to turn 180, go in that direction, then turn 180 again, and then you've probably lost your whole orientation of what direction to go in next. And meanwhile, you've just burned like 30 seconds.
Yeah, Superman, the most powerful creature on Earth, has the turning radius of an 87 Dodge Caravan. It's so clunky.
And he can't go in reverse. He can't just like take a couple steps back. He can only move forward.
Right, not in the air. Yeah, it is so and
also, when you press down, he's just standing in the air.
Right.
Like it's like you control an elevator that he's in, where you just go up and down on one axis. It's the worst.
Like 80% of the game is flying through rings. Also, Superman's flying animation looks horrible. It looks like he's just doing waist-up jumping jacks. It's so, in a prone position. And it has this sound effect that you keep there, because there's like five assets total in the game. It's the same sound effects and voiceover clips keep repeating. And the sound effect you hear every time that he flies is just like...
Yeah.
Just every time you accelerate,
like flushing an air toilet.
A gust of wind is just going through the trees over and over.
I
again.
have it right here. It's very quick.
Okay.
And it does that over and over again.
Yeah. The music, too, also is really super duper repetitive, like the game itself.
There's a sound effect in the music that sounds like a car alarm going off in the far distance that is atonal to the rest of the song.
Yeah. Right.
And it's really that it kind of makes you uneasy the whole time. Like you should feel awesome when you're playing Superman.
Yeah.
But there's like a doo-doo-doo-doo. Like a whole fucking, like no matter what track is playing.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've been driven mad by Lex Luthor's virtual world. He's just that twisted.
Wait, okay, do you think that Superman in the game can hear the music since it's a virtual world?
He's just driving himself crazy listening to this awful soundtrack.
This is Superman's problem, though, because, I mean, it's not a new observation that Superman's too powerful for a hero, and so it's hard to come up with challenges for him. When I was a kid, my favorite Superman story I read was The Death of Superman, because they finally had one character who's as strong as Superman, and then they're fighting, and it's like, poof, poof, it's like super punches and stuff. But Superman, through most of the comics, does not usually punching people because he would just kill everybody. So they have all these characters like Mr. Mxyzptlk or whatever, like who are trickster spirits and who put Superman in weird mazes or like make him take potions or do like various magic spells and weird, puzzles for him to solve, which is not what Superman is good at. He's good at flying and punching.
It's weird that his weakness as a character is like kind of agreed by the villains to be he's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Batman's the greatest detective. You can't trick Batman. Like we know Superman is strong and fast and can see through things, but everybody agrees he has difficulty in a maze.
He's a dumb guy. If you want him to be trapped in a virtual world, you just have to tell him to go into it. And then he's unclear on what a maze is, so I think you just have some floating rings.
Which way do I go? Which way do I go?
It's the most linear sequence imaginable, but he will be completely lost.
It's almost like Luthor was like, he's never going to find his fucking way through this virtual world.
Yeah.
I should give him some rings to fly
The Superman 64 you're playing is like Lex has iterated on a few times and nerfed the difficulty level because Superman was just trapped in it for years. God, I feel bad about him.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I kept playing the game thinking that, because look, I've played a lot of games with bad control schemes.
Sure.
I can get into that mode and be like, all right, let me just be careful and do it. And it's not impossible if you just put yourself in that. I mean, I did it after playing Sekiro. So I was like, all right, I can get through the first level of this. But you keep hoping that there's going to be something after the rings, that the rings are like just a very bad tutorial level.
Yes.
And it's structured like a tutorial level. You press start and it's like, Superman, fly through these rings. And so you do it. And then the next thing that happens is you have to pick up a car. You have to before people get hit by the car, I think, which you have 5 seconds to do it.
Yes. Oh, you were way charitable on the context from the objective, because the objective set is lift 2 cars. It says nothing about what you're supposed to do. And you get 6 seconds to do it.
And you just fly up to the car, and then Superman is suddenly holding the car.
Right.
And I just mashed some buttons, and he dropped the car, and I went and picked up the other car, and that was it. And I was like, all right, that was almost nothing, but what's next? And what was next was another minute and a half of rings.
Yes.
And I did those rings, and then it was like, now you have to take a car from point A to point B, which I did very easily. And then it was once again more rings. And I was just, you get this sinking feeling like like, imagine you're a kid on Christmas morning and you're getting further into these rings. You're like, I think it's just rings all the way down.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be nothing but rings with slight interstitials.
And the moment you complain about it, your parents are like, I spent $69 goddamn dollars on Superman.
It's $19.99.
You play that fucking game until it's beaten.
It's so sad.
Also, you were really generous on the second objective, which was move the police car to the end of the road.
Yes.
But it is not clear which one is, like, there's a car, but it doesn't look like a police car.
No, it's just a car.
It's a solid black limousine.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to do this. It just says do it.
No, yeah, otherwise, but then otherwise, if you don't do it, Lex will shoot Lex's minions will shoot a bunch of bullets at it, and the car will explode, and it'll just say Lex wins, and you'll hear Lex's laugh, which is again one of the few sound effects / voiceover clips you will hear throughout the game. Matt, I don't know if you have that one queued up
right here.
Wait, that's it?
Yeah,
that was
that's
actually weirdly high resolution and like close to the mic.
I think it is like an actual asset from the game. So like mixed within the game, it has a little more like oomph on it. But
it sounds like he's it sounds like he's here.
What is the Lex Luthor intro?
Oh, this is what he says at the very beginning of the game.
Great.
In short time, your fate will be sealed, Superman.
Does not match the text on screen at all.
No.
A completely different thing that's put on screen as he's saying that.
That's a good video game voice sample. That sounds like, Castlevania, Dracula's talking to me,
I would want to hear that in an EDM song before the drop.
Do you think are the people Superman is saving in the virtual world real people? Like, if he doesn't lift that car and bring it to its destination.
That's the idea. They specifically don't want that.
So he's doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Like, later in the game, you go to this dam level, and they're threatening you that these scientists are locked in a cage underwater, and if you can't rescue the scientists because then everything will flood. But none of that's real.
No, that's fake. Yeah.
That nobody is in danger.
But Superman doesn't know or does he know it's not real?
He's told it's a virtual world.
So he knows. He's not been tricked into it. This isn't like Mario having a dream in Super Mario Brothers 2.
Yeah.
He knows this is all bullshit. He's just kind of trying to power through it. This is the objectives in this game. So there are a bunch of ridiculous ones involving just like lifting cars and saving civilians. Aren't that many? Here is one that comes on pretty early that comes up a bunch. Use your super breath to blow 3 tornadoes away.
Jesus fucking
Why are there
Christ.
tornadoes in downtown Metropolis? Yeah. Just like, I guess is this supposed to be a Midwest city with a this is like the equivalent of Oklahoma City. But there's just like 3 idle tornadoes in a reservoir, and then you just walk up to them with your super breath and you blow them. It looks like you're inhaling them. It looks like he's sucking them in, which maybe he is. And you blow them away, and then that's it. It's like basically a bunch of mini games sandwiched between big long ring sequences.
Yeah, it's like what they did was they had a couple verbs that they implemented. They're like, okay, we got our character model, we got some verbs. You can fly. Cars, you can pick them up. If you go to a car, you pick the car up. You press a different button, you put the car down. You press this button, you blow. And then that was then they were out of time.
Right.
And they were like, all right, we will just put some objects in and you have to use the verb on that thing in a short amount of time. And the challenge is that it's poorly implemented and hard to do, or like you don't actually play with those things. It's like, what if like Super Mario Brothers was just like, it was just like, jump on this block and then you do it and okay, you're done. Like,
right.
That's all that there is to jump on the Goomba's head. Okay, the end, you know?
Right.
The tornadoes took me so long.
Me too.
So long, because also the you don't know how to activate his power.
No.
You have no idea that he doesn't have his power when you start. It's a two-dimensional icon that's rotating. So if you look at it the wrong time,
yes.
you literally can't see it because it's facing
You'll
away.
fly right
Really?
past it.
That's your meter of whether you have the breath power.
Yeah. And then you go up to the fucking tornado and you don't, it also doesn't tell you like blow them away. It's just like use
Blow
your
on
breath.
them. Yeah.
Yes.
Use your breath on tornadoes.
Right. Which also, too, would that make a tornado dissipate? I feel like that would maybe worsen it. If you blew Superman's forceful, powerful breath directly into a cyclone.
Is his breath cold?
I think it's
in
cold.
the game, it's cold.
Yes.
He does have freezing breath, I think.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
I don't know that much about Superman.
It's a stupid power.
That's an
It is a dumb
insane power.
There are parts in the game later where you freeze things. There are like some bombs that you freeze, and
humans.
and humans that you freeze.
Whoa.
You freeze Lois Lane to save her from gunfire at
Right.
one, or electricity or some shit at one point. Like you put her in a block of ice and there's no pushing animation. There's no like animation where Superman's behind it, like pushing this block of ice while he's got Lois Lane in the block of ice. He's just walking like with his arms at his side into the ice to push her down a hallway.
Yes.
And then at the end, she's like, wow, that was cold, but thank you, Superman.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play through the whole game, but I did watch a full playthrough of the game, which was over 3 hours,
Wow.
longer than Avengers Endgame. Was like watching a time lapse of a building. It was just so, because it's all the same. It's all the same shit. It's just rings. It's just mostly rings, and then some walking levels, and
Some walking levels.
they literally are walking levels, because that's what Superman does. Unless he has a super speed power up, he just walks, and he walks at a slow clip.
He walks like the Resident Evil like guys in Resident Evil 1. It's
Right.
like tank-like. Like very, very stiff. And also he clips through shit constantly. And once he clips, it's not like the game resets him outside of that space. If he gets caught in a wall, that's it.
No, yeah, he's
that's
trapped in
fucking it.
He's trapped in Lex's virtual world forever.
Well, that's the danger of a virtual world if
Yeah.
the clipping's bad.
Also, everything explodes. Like there's a
Right.
you pick up cardboard boxes in that dam level to find like a microchip. And he throws the box, a cardboard box, and it explodes with the same effect as the cars that explode.
Yeah. Again, they're just recycling the same assets over. We got the one explosion. Throw that in
Yeah.
there. Also, too, that's like about where I got checked out is when you're like you're Superman, okay, and then in that dam level you have to like retrieve a key card, and then you have to like use a computer terminal. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I'm fucking Superman. I have to like
Yeah.
log into the mainframe.
Doesn't Lex say if you punch through the wall it'll flood?
Yes.
So that's the justification, but you still have to. He still won't walk through lasers. Like there are laser doors,
Right.
And I'm like, fucking Superman can walk through that shit.
Yeah, he's super everything.
I guess they're kryptonite lasers, which and that speaks to another feature of this game that you will notice right away. It's so fucking ugly because it has this green tinge everywhere, and to cover up the N64's horrible draw distance, you can't because it was at one point meant to be an open world, so you can see a lot in the distance you would have been able to see a lot in the distance of Metropolis, but it's covered up with this green fog, this thick green impenetrable fog, which I guess is supposed to be like a kryptonite fog. which partially accounts for Superman's powers being
Yeah.
suppressed, and then also just for the game just like looking like absolute dog shit.
You know, I played Turok on that console, and Turok was foggy.
Sure.
But it was like atmospheric and cool. Like they could have just made the fog gray, and it could be a rainy day in Metropolis.
Yeah.
And like Superman fans could have been like, "Oh, we're sad. Help us," and it would have been like moody.
Right.
But instead,
Yeah.
it was like fucking green fog, like pea soup green.
It's really gross. The fog, you know, N64 gets shit for the fog, but it's possible to do the fog well.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world to have the fog.
Yeah, it's like the whole game takes place in a Shrek fart. It's just like this. And then and so like as you progress through the Superman's fighting is something we should talk about. So the enemies that are basically other than the bosses that you get recycled, the enemies who I don't think they had a budget for textures for because they're the shadows and they're just like these they look like silhouettes of Darkwing Duck holding bolt action rifles. And Superman, you can dispatch most of them with a single punch.
Yeah.
But Superman's fighting animation is so. It's the definition of flailing.
Yeah.
He looks so inhuman and uncool when he's fighting. He looks like an inflatable tube man in front of a car dealership.
His first punch, I believe, is an overhand drop down punch.
Right.
Like a clunk on the head.
Yeah, which is not the way that any
No.
human starts a fight by overhand down punching.
Yeah, unless you're Larry fighting Moe in the Three Stooges.
And his legs like are floppy underneath his body. It's
Yeah.
fucked. It's real. Like I know that this show is going to be us playing a lot of bad video games, but I'm astonished at how bad the video game is. Like it's really.
I looked up on Wikipedia. It said that it took them 2 years to make this game, and that's shocking to me. Like, what were they doing?
I can buy
they have
that.
it scrapped multiple times, or
Well,
have to
yeah,
start over.
I mean, I think just in late '90s video game development terms and working for a platform like Superman 64, I mean, it's just so resource intensive. I think to build assets and to do the programming, that the tools were not what they are now. So you had to build a lot more from scratch. And I think also too, it's like there's probably what we're not seeing is how much of the game was probably cut, like because for time, like they probably had a much more ambitious design that as the deadline approached, they just had to keep scaling down. So a lot of the work was wasted, and they ended up winnowing it down into trying to get something resembling playable to meet their ship date.
The game is not Superman's struggle in a virtual world. It's the developer's struggle against the Warner Brothers lawyers. Like that's
Yeah,
the
real.
frustration we're experiencing
Right.
as the player is their frustration when they get a note that's like, yeah, we really want all the enemies to be dark shadows.
Right.
And can you slow down the pedestrian speed? Because
Yeah.
it's alarming if the pedestrians get from one place to another.
That's
it makes
what
Superman look slow.
I feel like they must have had to throw out a lot of stuff because it's just not. I mean, this is in the middle of the N64's lifespan. There are plenty of games that I'm sure were made in 2 years that were much more serviceable than
For
this
sure.
game. And so I feel like that first level, I'm just like, what? When did this get made? Like, it must have been 2 weeks. I mean, we're talking 2 years. That's 100 weeks. Like, I don't see how they could have, without some huge disruption.
Right.
They also showed it off at E3 when it was in development. Like it was premiered a year ahead of time, and people were like, "Oh shit, this is going to be cool." And then it was not.
Right.
Like that, but like it's like the first time that I saw Wind Waker at E3, I was like, "Oh my god!" And I looked forward to it for a year. It's same with this. Like people saw the Superman game and they were like, "Wow, the flying looks pretty cool."
Yeah.
I wonder if the rings are a tutorial.
It's making me think that Superman 64 was kind of 90s nerd culture's Fire Festival. Just this overpromised, under-delivered debacle. Matt, you had an observation about the rings.
Yeah, what was my observation? I don't remember.
I'll say it for you. This game has more rings than Sonic 2006.
Oh, yes, that's right, because as we remarked in the Sonic 06 episode, hardly any rings to speak of.
No.
They're rare and far between.
A paucity of rings.
Yeah.
Here an abundance of rings. Yeah. More rings than you can ask for. In addition to Dark Shadows, the other enemies you'll encounter in this game are just the shittiest looking robots. I mean, they just look like fucking
They look like
garbage.
Roombas.
Yeah.
They
They-
fucking suck.
The rejected concept art from like Lucasfilm. He's just like, oh, we can't put this in the movie. This looks awful.
Also, they fire at a rate where if they hit you once, you have to take all 8 bullets. Like
Right.
they shoot you once, and you've just got to be like,
get stun locked?
fuck. Yeah, you're just like thump, 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 thump. And whether or not you're in that part of the map, like if you're flying through rings past an area where there is gunfire, they are firing at that rate off in the distance, and you can hear them. So you'll like do a bypass of a section that you'll have a battle in later, and you'll just hear.
Oh,
Then
boy.
if you get near it again, it'll be like.
Right.
Now that sounds a little Dark Soulsy. That's the kind of thing where it's like, ooh, I hear the enemies through the walls. Maybe I can like that sort of use of sound is very From Software. So maybe there was a little. Maybe that's where Miyazaki got some inspiration from Superman 64. I don't know.
Probably. I think we can safely assume that's where he drew his inspiration.
Yeah, we should add that to the Wikipedia.
One of my favorite objectives, because you were talking about the slow-moving pedestrians and the escort/rescue missions, destroy the dark shadows in front of the skater. And then it's just like, what the fuck does that mean?
In front of the skater?
Yeah, in front of, and so there's just basically, they're not attacking him, they're just in front of this kid on a skateboard. You kill them, and then you have to wait for this kid to very slowly skateboard. He's slow. He's a skateboarding child who's as fast as a senior on a Wrangler scooter that's running out of batteries. So sluggish.
All of the instructions are a little like it. I know it's a French team, but all the instructions needed a translation pass.
Right. I think
Yeah.
they did, but then they accidentally translated them back into French and then back into English.
Because like in the instructions, like if you play the tutorial, like the phrase "the controller gives the strength" is like used to describe like punches and like direction. The controller gives the strength. Oh, okay.
But for some reason, you forgive it more in video games, the translation when it's Japanese to English. But I feel like when it's French, I have less patience.
Sure.
Like, come on. Like, you know what I'm like.
Yeah.
A lot of you speak English in France. There's a lot of English speakers there. They're in Europe, you know.
Yeah, I think that's all. Every American has xenophobia towards the French. That is the one thing we are all united about. Another objective: grab and throw the 3 mine droppers. That was the name they came up with for the mine dropping robots. The mine droppers.
Mine droppers.
Grab
Mine
and
droppers.
grab and throw the 3 robots to protect the people. The enemy AI by the.
I think, by the way, the skater, I want to say, I think the reason they had the skater in there was the success of Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy.
Gotta
we're
be.
talking about 1999.
Right.
Skaters were very in at the time, so I think that's why Skater.
That timeline roughly lines up, I'm sure.
Why not citizens to protect the citizens? Why the people?
Skaters are people too, Heather.
The people.
No, I'm saying they are, but it's just such an insane. It's like an alien fucking programmed it, and it's like use the powers to save the people. Like it's like that's an insane way to put. Nobody says the people.
The people. Well, yeah, it's like they're abstractified. Like we've got the fruit and the vegetables and the people. Like it's like a type of. Does that make sense? Like there's
Right.
objects floating around in the world, like that you're pulling out of like an art asset store.
Like you never are at like you're in line at Starbucks and somebody's like, "Hey, did you pick up the coffee yet?" And you're like, "No, I'm still in line behind the people."
Hey man, are you okay? So one of the later levels, or midway through the game, you get into Lex Luthor's lair in the LexCorp, and you sort of fight your way through it. This was part that I watched on a playthrough video. There's a puzzle where it seems like what you have to do to unlock an elevator is unscramble Luthor, which is not a very secure password. So after Lex escapes from his lair, and you look at Lex's desk, and there are on his desk, this is a plot device, memos from all the other members of the Legion of Doom. They're like printed out, and so it's like he's got like paper copies of things that say, "From Brainiac to Lex Luthor, I am holding Jimmy Olsen at my warehouse." So these were like emailed over to him, and he was like, "I need hard copies of these on my desk."
Gonna read these later at lunch.
Yeah.
Wait, is Brainiac the kind of? I don't know anything about Superman. Is he the kind of guy who would sit down at a computer?
I guess. I mean, that's what we're implying, or that's what we can infer from what's happening in this virtual world.
Wait. No, in Lex's virtual world, he's made Brainiac the kind of guy who would email him.
Yeah.
And his virtual version is the kind of Lex who would print something.
Whereas real Brainiac logged into the virtual world is like a favorite. Luther's like, "Hey, I got this virtual world. I'm trying to get started. Would you come hang out for a little bit? Send me some memos. Maybe kidnap Jimmy Olsen. Wait, like real Jimmy Olsen? No, virtual Jimmy Olsen."
Did it say? I didn't get this far. Dark Side or Dark Seed? I never know which it is because they both sound cool.
Apparently, it's Side.
Dark Side. He's in this game, right?
He is, and there's a part where Superman fights Darkseid, and it looks like two winos duking it out in the parking lot of a
That's sick
Sizzler.
because Darkseid is like, I mean, he's like a god. Like
Yes.
he's a very cool. He's like massively powerful. He's like Thanos from Avengers. He's like
Yes.
that kind of character. He's a god from space, right? So why is he in the virtual world?
Well, you might also ask the question, why is he in the multiplayer levels driving a car?
Oh yes, the multiplayer.
What?
We should touch on the multiplayer, which
I
Heather
didn't know
and
it was multiplayer.
we played this just before we started recording, and boy, it is. As baffling as the single player game is, this is even less clear.
But with more people.
With more people, yeah.
More the people.
So the multiplayer, there's multiplayer fight and multiplayer race. We played both, and I don't really understand the difference.
All right, so in race, you are in a space with rings, and the rings are disappearing at a given rate. And you are one villain driving a car, and there's another villain driving a car, which was Nick. And then you fire at each other. One of you explodes, and that's the end of the game. Whereas by contrast,
Yes.
in multiplayer fight, you are one villain in a car and another villain in a car flying around, and you shoot each other until one explodes. So that's the difference between race and fighting.
Okay, got it. I get it now. I didn't get it at first, but I get it now. Yeah, I don't know why they're in vehicles.
Superman's driving a car.
No, Superman is
Superman's
not
not in it.
involved. No, you want to play multiplayer Superman 64? You cannot pick Superman.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there are no other heroes. No, like you can't be like the Flash and Superman have a race. Like that would be
Wow.
the easiest multiplayer to do. Instead, you are in a three-dimensional driving. Like it's not flying; it's driving up or driving down
Yes.
or driving left or driving right.
But it's still 3D. They go up and down.
Yes, and you're in a car, and then you shoot. You can get power-ups.
Right. By the way, the
Fucking sucks.
speaking of power ups, so the art is so crude in this mode because I think it's just tacked on and it was reskinned. It was like they're like, we need to put something else. We need to put some multiplayer in because all 64 games have multiplayer. I don't know if I can throw this in there. So the vehicles and the item boxes, you can't distinguish what things are in this. It's like if in Mario if it's like in Mario Kart 64, the item boxes were what the carts looked like. It was just like everything just looks like the same, like gray, like little polyhedron.
It's bad.
It's very bad. We played both the multiplayer fight and the multiplayer race. Let's see.
I won the race, but you won the fight.
And I
think.
don't know why. I'm still unclear on to why. There's a part later on where Lois Lane is you rescue Lois Lane. She's been kidnapped. She's also being held in a warehouse. She says, "Thank you, Superman. We can leave this dreadful place now." And then you have to escort her from the scene of her kidnapping, and she leaves this warehouse with the pace that as if she's like taking a stroll through a dewy meadow on a nice morning. It's just like like leisurely.
She's wearing like high heels and like very, very. She's almost a little sexy in it too.
Yeah.
Like she's like in her skirt and she's like, "Oh my God, thank you for saving me." Click, click, click.
Jimmy Olsen looks like they stole a character model of Jimmy Neutron. He looks awful. So let's talk about the ending real quick. So there's giant enemy crabs at some point. There's some underwater levels, which I don't know what's going on.
There's underwater levels?
There's underwater levels,
Which I did some research. Apparently, they had Warner Brothers was like, "Well, Superman can't swim." And they were like, no, he can swim. And they had to show Warner Brothers comics of Superman swimming to as if Warner Brothers was like, no, there's no fucking
So
Aquaman
this is a story of there's one maniac executive that they have to deal with.
I guess so.
There's just like one real motherfucker who's as dense as bricks and is saying, Superman doesn't swim? What are you talking about? I've never seen it. Okay, I'll call you later.
I would argue that though this executive is a villain, I don't know that the developer was competent. Like, I feel like it's two fighting forces fighting for injustice.
Yes, yes.
It's hard to judge. I mean, of those 2 years of development time, they probably collectively spent 18 months of that on conference calls, like going over notes. So the very end of the game, you take 3 bombs to the center of what's called the Thunder Arena. And then you, I can't remember if you detonate them or you use them to detonate. And then you fly into a physical door in the world that says the end. It has a texture on it that says the end that you fly into. And that's the end of the game. It brings up, yes, go on.
I love that.
The final thing you see is, well done. You managed to get your friends out of this nightmare.
I have the clip right here of the very end because what the camera does in this moment is insane as well.
I want to see this. Whoa!
Why is it doing that?
Whoa! It's like punching in and out. It's like
Yeah, it's like Wayne's World.
And is this supposed to be Clark Kent?
Yeah, that's Clark Kent.
So he's just revealed his identity to everybody.
Yes.
Well done. You managed to get rid of this nightmare. And yeah, it's just like the camera's taking the zoom back and forth really fast.
And then it says, but in the real world, Lex is still there.
Yeah, which is very ominous. Like they were setting up for a sequel.
And they just let him leave, I guess?
There's no way Lex doesn't know that Clark Kent is Superman in that moment.
No, he absolutely must know.
Clark Kent
here's all the
has
programmers'
nothing
names.
to do with
Yes.
anything. Superman's been involved the whole time.
Right.
They just had this extra model of Clark Kent. Maybe they thought it was going to be like Metroid, where you see Samus out of her suit. If you do it really good, they're like, if they beat the game, let's show them Clark Kent, and they'll be really excited.
Well, this game sucks, but it's time to get to our final reviews for this. So here's how this will work. We'll each go around. We'll say something positive about the game, one positive takeaway, and then we'll give it a numerical decimal rating. I will start, and my positive is, I think you're staring at Superman's back for most of the game, and I think his cape animates okay. It's not terrible. It kind of flaps in a way where it's like, okay, someone figured out how to make that kind of look okay in Nintendo 64 terms. My score is a 1.1.
I think that there are sequences of the flying where, as long as you're not taking hard lefts or hard rights, that are almost enjoyable.
Yes.
It's like, I like a 3-dimensional flight game. And so that would be my positive takeaway from Superman 64, is that sometimes the flying isn't terrible. And I would you give it a 1.1?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 1.
Wow. 1.0 even. Adam Conover.
I would give it, I would say that something that struck me is the title typeface, the menu typeface that actually we're looking at right now that's showing us the programmers' names in.
Shout out Benoit Blanchard.
Yeah.
Jacques Chevalier.
Yeah.
Laurent Duplat.
Duplessis, Francois Mangot.
J.M. Maison. I hope all these guys are imprisoned in The Hague.
I think that's a very nice Art Deco typeface.
Yes, it is.
Very is evocative of Superman, because Superman's very Art Deco, sort of Chrysler Building superhero.
Right.
I think it's the original Whose Line Is It Anyway font.
It very well could be.
Oh, that explains why Colin Mockery makes a cameo.
But I think it's very nice, and look at this background here where we've got some sort of like golden or pinkish towers of Metropolis. Like they sort of nailed that part of the look.
Yeah.
So some good graphic design from that part of the team. I hesitate to give this a rating because it feels like it's like when someone like finds a prototype Nintendo cartridge like in a box because a Nintendo programmer died, and then they like upload it and they're like, look, this is not playable, but it's of interesting historical value. I feel like that's what this game is. It's so not a game that I want to give it like a divide by zero error as a rating. I don't think it counts as a game.
Okay, well, those are our scores, and as always, our scores are out of 1 million. I think I will say, it sold 500,000 copies.
500,000 copies.
500,000 disappointed children received this.
This is the thing with licensed game properties, is it's always that way, isn't it? People buy them no matter what.
Yeah, and or at least they did up until a certain point. And look, I am not blameless in this. I worked in video game development. I worked on a couple of reprehensible Fantastic Four, the movie games. And what happens in development of these is there's just like the continuing pressure of a deadline, because they know they know that it's going to sell. They slash the budget, and so your team is not big enough to execute what the licensor is demanding. And I'm sure that happened to Superman 64 to an insane degree. I'm sure I'm not, and the developer's not blameless. I am not blameless in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. I designed some levels in that game. I did not do a good job, but part of what exacerbates this is just the constraints of just not having enough money, not having enough time, and a licensor just giving constant notes. But yeah, it's a fucking mess. It's awful. It's truly awful. I'd say this is the worst thing I've played in my life.
Do you think it had?
I've played worse.
Do you think it had the Nintendo seal of quality on it?
I don't mean you have to earn that seal, but
it definitely did, which goes to show you what that counts for. That seal of quality.
It used to be worth something.
It sure did.
Wow, guys.
But the thing is, that's our take. Although maybe we're wrong.
Maybe we're wrong.
So Heather and I have found some positive reviews of this game, some assessments that disagree with us, and we are going to read some of these now and talk about them.
From Frink's Fusion on Reddit, I have, my cousin and I rented it from Blockbuster and immediately played a few rounds of the multiplayer. It wasn't anything special, but it's not terrible. I don't think I ever played the single player.
It is like this. If you rented this game, it would not be nearly as crushing, because you'd just be like, "Oh, this game sucks," or "I don't know how to play it," and you'd return it and it'd be fine. But if you got this for Christmas, it would fucking suck.
It
this would be
sucks
so
that there's
awful.
no way to rent. You can't rent games now. You can't go pay $3 to have a game for $3. I guess there's the Redbox things. But like Steam, there's no game rental that lets you take a chance on a shitty game.
Yeah, unless a digital store has some sort of a nice return policy, you can't really take flyers.
It's a great way to take a chance on and play some weird ass games. Just rent them and get the photocopied manual.
The trajectory of this game has been interesting because you have it had high expectations. People thought it was going to be this awesome Superman game. It came out and it was awful. It was abominable. And then for a time, I think people approached it from like, okay, I know this is a terrible game, and then I played it as like, oh, it's not that bad. There are things in it that are okay. And now people obviously approach it like we are, from a perspective of grim curiosity. Mm-hmm. Like you want to see what this train wreck was all about.
Yeah.
I have a review from what I believe to be a serial killer.
Oh.
Yeah.
I rented it back when it first came out, and I didn't think it was that bad. I had a Tips and Tricks magazine at the time that had a strategy guide for it, so that definitely helped some. Once you make it past the first training stage with the rings, you get to do actual levels where you run around beating up guys.
That's why it had to be a virtual world. Yeah. This guy does not understand the difference.
They weren't guys, they were virtual.
Yeah.
This guy is sitting on his couch in a sweater, no pants, full erection, beating up men as Superman.
So I looked around, I dug around in the GameFAQs forums, and the closest thing I could find to a rave in the reviews was this from FF_TLSOK. Not as super as I had hoped. Not the greatest game, that's for sure. Hovering around the average area, in my opinion. If you can find it for a cheap price, for say $5 or $10, I'd get it. It has its moments, far and few between, but a few nonetheless. 3 stars. That's the person who liked it the most. That's this game's ceiling, is a 3-star. It's okay. Some moments far and few between, but a few.
I mean, some people will play anything, and
it's
they
true.
just enjoy controlling the thing, and that's fine. There's a lot of people who just watch any movie and have no problem with that.
Well, FF_TLS okay, apparently among them. That was maybe we're wrong. It's now time for the question block. A few questions we've pulled together from people on social media. First one, Graham Naden writes, is it at least any fun to fly? Yeah. I would say this is the one thing that the game absolutely whiffs on. It's just like, as we mentioned up top, it's just, it would be fun. I think it could be fun to fly if the controls were tightened up and if you had more leeway to explore a little bit, but you don't. You're so restricted in where you can go.
It's not fun to fly.
No, it's not. Our answer is no, Graham.
Yeah. The answer
and it's
is
such a
no.
bummer because like that Spider-Man game, I was bored to tears by that Spider-Man game. Except the swinging was fun. That was fun. And then once I had up my fill of swinging, I don't need to go collect pigeons or whatever.
Right.
But like that really got me through about 10 hours. And it's a bummer that was like the motion of traversal would have been what made that.
Yeah, for sure.
I've got a question here from Arkamat on Twitter, and I say this is someone with a Superman logo tattooed on my body. Is a good Superman video game even possible? And I thought about this a lot. And here's my pitch, guys.
Okay.
I think that you could make a good Superman game if it was like Crazy Taxi. I think it's a guy in danger and you got to get to him in a certain amount of time and then you got to get him to his house and that's on a timer.
Right.
Like, or get him to the hospital or something.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just a chain of how many pedestrians can you save in any given level. And then you get a score at the end and it's like, you did it, Superman. All right, on to Detroit.
Because you're right. That would be Superman's actual life too.
Yeah.
Is just Superman constantly being harried and trying to. There's so many people who need help.
Yeah.
And he works in the gig economy, and he just has to spend all this time trying to get from person to person, and that would be the real life of a superhero.
Yeah. It's the trolley problem over and over again. Like which of these civilians do I save? I like your pitch a lot, Heather. I just like and I think that you can keep some elements. I just think like I wonder if instead of a chain of civilians, like keep the timer.
Yeah.
But the chain of civilians could be like a chain of rings. and then instead of rescuing them, Superman can just like traverse them, like just fly through them.
Look, I think I'm hoping that some developer hears this and is like, yeah, I might make that game because I think you could also like, depending on how the pedestrians are like scattered through the city, you could also like chain combo. Like you could like collect like 4 dudes at once and save them because it's almost like being an Uber driver.
Exactly.
It's also like if you want, I think another thing you could do with Superman is, you have to fight enemies, but how do you minimize civilian casualties? How do you minimize property damage? I don't know a ton about Superman clearly, and I know even less after playing this game. But it was
maybe forget things about Superman.
But I know that an element of it is he tries to so if you had to dispatch villains, but you can't kill them, that's a little bit of a challenge, right? That's a little bit of a nuanced thing. Again, though, I think just like and Adam mentioned power fantasies earlier, like that is so much of I think of being Superman that. It becomes when you have to be delicate a little bit that maybe mutes the power fantasy element to some degree. That's maybe partly why there's a challenge versus someone who can just blow shit up indiscriminately.
Wasn't the PlayStation 2 controller didn't have analog buttons as well as analog sticks?
Yeah, one of them did either PS2 or PS3. I think it was PS2.
So maybe that's part of the key there is like that you have to like very lightly tap the punch button or you'll like explode.
I like your plan because I like, my complaint, for instance, about that Batman game is like, if I'm a superhero, I want to save people.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the fun, especially the classic superheroes, the X-Men aren't out saving people most of the time, but like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, they're always just like, oh, a building is falling down, let me go catch it, and like, thank you,
Right.
And the Batman game never let me do that. This game never really lets you do that. There's a couple things where it sort of says you're saving I don't know. But and the Spider-Man game kind of had that a little bit where, you could interact with people and like give them finger guns and stuff like that. But I want like that feeling of, I'm helping out the folks who need help. I'm not always just trying to do weird random challenges. So I like your idea.
Mm-hmm.
Piss and Vinegar writes, why are there rings in the sky?
Because it's a virtual world.
Lex Luthor put them there.
They're his maze.
Yeah, as we've established, he didn't have the rings.
This
first
person
pass.
has not watched the beginning of the game where it's all very clearly laid out. And, why are we having to answer questions for people who can't even look something up on YouTube or get the game themselves?
Right. Yeah, that question was a waste of our time.
Here's a comment, because I said questions are comments.
Sure.
Stephen Magny writes, I remember playing the demo of that game, Laser Vision.
Oh.
Yeah, there is laser vision, but you have to acquire a power up.
I believe it's heat vision.
Heat vision. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, Nick. We gotta cut that.
Jesus. We get raked over the coals with the DC nerds. You have the heat vision, and again, like most things in games, it controls pretty shitty. But you can use it to dispatch enemies and solve some puzzles if you acquire power up.
Well, he has 3 powers. It's freezing, heat,
and super speed.
Super speed, but you can't control that. It's just you activate it and he goes.
And I think the same whoosh sound effect plays.
Jesus.
I think it's called Turbo in the game.
Right.
Just Turbo.
Yeah.
It's weird when superhero games make you collect a power up for something the superhero can just like do all the time.
Yeah. Right. It's an innate attribute of Superman. But hey, you know what? He takes damage from bullets, so who knows?
Why would Lex allow him his powers in a virtual world?
Yeah, this is a very good question.
Like, why wouldn't he step through the gate and just be like regular man?
Yeah, right.
And like Lex Luthor's like, this is what it's like to be human. Just suffer.
Yeah.
Here's feel pain.
But instead he's like, I'll let you still fly, and then like,
why isn't it like I have no mouth yet I must scream? Right. But when he turns into a tortured jelly creature, like the horrible famous Harlan Ellison short story. Look it up if you don't know it.
Also an adventure game, a point-and-click adventure game.
Oh, yeah.
From back in the day. Here's one from Kevin that's targeted at me, but I want to hear your guys' perspective as well. As someone with game testing and design experience, at what point does a game like this become a turd? When a game has a big license like Superman, is it ever the intention to put something lackluster out for business reasons, or is it just some major fuck-up along the way? I mean, you guys having played this, is your assessment, do you feel like they tried to make a good game and failed, or they were just sort of like happy to just get any Superman game out there to kind of bilk the rubes?
Well, I think the problem is the they.
Sure.
Is who you're talking about with they. It's no one's ever intention to do a bad job.
Right.
Certainly there, as you said earlier, budgets get cut and they don't invest in the game being good because they want to make more money. That's a different way of phrasing this. No one's intention to like screw people over. But the thing that I realized once I started making TV is that the reason things are bad in these projects is because 90% of the time, why is a TV show bad? Why is a movie bad? Why is a video game bad? 90% of the time it's because they're set up in such a way where it couldn't possibly be good.
Right.
And no matter how much the people who work on the thing want it to be good, it's like, why is a TV show bad? Because somebody at the production company said that they could deliver the show in 6 months for $50,000 an episode, and then all the people who are making the show are like, that's impossible.
Right.
Well, we have to do it anyway, right? I've been I've been in situations where you're working on it and you're like, well, this is never going to be good, but like we have to do it anyway. And now I'm making bad work and I'm upset about it.
Yeah.
Because the constraints of the situation we've been put in are such that that's the only result. And that's like the fundamental sin of any, I think where capitalism and creativity combine is the person who makes that decision is the person who has made the big fuck up. And I'm sure someone made that decision in this case, but that person also usually has no awareness that they're doing that. They're just some business asshole and they don't give a shit.
And also I especially think in the 90s that they would have viewed they would have viewed video games as just like, oh yeah, it's just like a toy, it's just like a side thing. They're not viewing it as any sort of artistic endeavor. Some people don't still have that perspective, but they just they don't even care about the quality. They just make it cheap, make it fast, it'll sell to the kids. And they were right in this case. To your point about there being systemic issues, having worked on things that are bad in both TV and in video games. It's like working at a company that makes piss-flavored popsicles, and you're just like, why do the popsicles taste bad? Just like, well, add some more sugar, like maybe freeze them for longer. It's just like, well, fundamentally what we're doing is not going to work because it's a bad idea. We can't fix it. What's frustrating about Superman 64 is there is a good idea here in theory. It's just executed so poorly and so sloppily. But yeah, I think there's a division between the publisher and /licensor and the developer who have different goals and different objectives.
Well, it bugs me when I'm sorry, you can.
No, I was going to say I feel like the failure is from the logo of the developer. The moment the game boots up and there's a high school drawing of a dog, it's like, well, they didn't even manage to get a dude to draw their logo.
No, yeah, it's like a crude deviant art of Tales. It's just so half-assed. It's someone described Crash Bandicoot over the phone.
It just bothers me how much, one of the things I don't like about contemporary gaming culture is with bad games, there's a tendency to you'll see YouTube videos about these shitty developers are trying to rip everybody off and we hate the developer.
Right.
And that's why the game is bad because the developer's evil jerk. And I'm like, for me, it's more like, look, think about, if you want to know why the game is bad, why does what happens at your work suck?
Sure.
Why does your job do bad work? Why, whatever it is you do, why are you failing at that? Because of think about all those reasons. That's also happening at the video game developer, is not enough money, not enough time, a couple stupid people, and, shit comes out,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Are they still in business?
Titus?
Titus filed for bankruptcy on January 9, 2005, which doesn't mean they wouldn't be in business still, but
oh boy, rest in peace, Titus and their logo,
what else
Bubsy 1D.
What else did they make? Oh yeah, there's the Titus logo. Because I remember this. I remember this developer name. This is the kind of company, a lot of what I call Nintendo Power games.
Sure.
I read about Nintendo Power but never actually played.
Yeah, Dick Tracy, Blues Brothers. Carmageddon 64, I think was maybe could have been decently received.
Yeah, Carmageddon wasn't bad. That was what was the one with the ice cream truck, but for the N64.
Oh right, Twisted Metal.
Yeah,
it was their Twisted Metal clone.
There's a game on there called Virtual Kasparov, where Lex Luthor imprisons Gary Kasparov in a virtual world that makes him play chess.
The game that apparently did them under was Garfield Saving Arlene.
Published in Japan only.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I think we got our next episode figured out. We're gonna stay in the Titus world for a while.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of games to play.
Yeah, we got a year ahead of us. Adam Conover, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Your new podcast. Tell everyone about it.
It's called Factually. It's out on Earwolf now. It is a comedy interview podcast. I talk to experts, professors, journalists, advocates, incredible people. Talk about the mind-blowing facts that they know that you probably don't know. It's really fun. Come check it out.
Check that out, and keep checking us out.
Check us out.
Yeah, check us out. Listen to the podcast that you just listened to.
Yeah, listen to
Give it a
another
listen.
one.
Give it a shot.
I had a blast.
Hey, Matt, what's next week's game?
Next week's game is Hatterful Boyfriend, the bird dating sim.
No, thank you.
You have to do it.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.